Back in 1996, Bill Paxton and Helen Hunt tangled with the tornadoes in the action-smash Twister. Almost 30 years later, oh Lord, 30 years, the 90s blockbuster has spawned a sequel of sorts, and it's swirling into theaters today. CBC's senior entertainment reporter Eli Glasner has swirled into the studio. So now we have Twisters. I like what they did there. It's been a while. I didn't realize 30 years, Lord help us. How did we get here?
This is, forgive me, the perfect storm conditions for a sequel. First, as always, the nostalgia factor, right? This movie, the original, it's gone on long enough that it's gone from being just a guilty pleasure to this treasured cultural artifact. Then you have, of course, what we're living through. We're reporting on it day by day, extreme weather. We know the climate is changing, so what perfect time to bring together, and the final critical element, you need the spectacle, widescreen spectacle, and what could be better than the swirling, whirling, mass destruction of Twisters? But let me for a moment, because I'm going to be doing a lot of comparing, bring us back to 96. Eli was a little younger. Now, the original Twister was not perfect. It hammered us over the head with Helen Hunt, her character Joe's tragic origin story. I couldn't stop it. I need to predict all of that. But what it lacked in subtlety, so much personality. Helen Hunt as Joe, she's fiery, she's independent, she's got her own voice, she's quirky. Bill Paxton, the kind of reluctant weatherman, joining the forces, and what an ensemble. I love all these characters, even though they were small parts, they stood on their own. Philip Seymour Hoffman as the surfer dude Dustin. Alan Ruck, you know him from Succession as Rabbit the Map Guy. Nothing like that in the new version. The one thing I can say, so let's segue to the present, they did insist, just like the original, on filming in Oklahoma. So we have, as they say, once in a generation collection of storms brewing. Anthony Ramos is Javi, and he has this company. He's trying to scan tornadoes to learn more, but he needs a tornado spotter. And the best in the business is Daisy Edgar-Jones. There she is, hanging on for dear life as Kate. Now, she's the meteorologist, she's the PhD, she's got all the letters in her name, but she just looks at the sky and looks at the clouds and says, east. Now that's team science. There you see the other side. The hot shots pull in, country song blasting, fans cheering. Glen, Powell, Mr. Top Gun is Tyler, the storm wrangler, the storm chaser, or as someone describes them, hillbillies with a YouTube channel.
Hey, T, tell the folks how you feeling.
I'm feeling pretty good, Boone. And if you feel it, I said if you feel it,
There's a lot of love for Mr. Powell these days, but I gotta say, as Tyler, he is a human belt buckle, walking around in the Stetson and the boots, looking like a living Levi's ad. Take a little taste.
You know, our crew is not like your crew.
I can't breathe, then I catch my breath.
We don't need PhDs and fancy tech.
You don't know when it's
Sometimes the old ways are better than the new.
I guess he's gonna use his lasso to get that tornado. And yet, Kate and Tyler, supposed to be so different, but listen to the shared love language as they're in separate trucks, both chasing the same storm.
Flow is clean, pulling tons of warm, moist air from the south.
And when that warm air and moisture busts through the cap, it explodes in the atmosphere, creating an anvil. The vertical wind shear begins to rotate the updraft, forming a mesocyclone.
And here's the mystery.
We don't know how a tornado forms. We see the hook on the radar, but
What are all the invisible factors coming together? Every little detail that
it has to be perfect.
A mesocyclone? I guess the rodeo riding cowboy weatherman learned a couple things along the way.
I'm just seeing her in the front seat looking up at the sky exactly as you described. Oh, it's so beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay, so, I mean, it's a little cheesy, but it could be fun. Did this new one learn anything from the original?
I mean, everything glows when you look backwards with that kind of nostalgic view, right? And so I think it's worth remembering the original Twister, like, it was the special effect. People were really excited. We can use computers to make tornadoes. That was the reason they made the film. But because it was still a new effect, they had to accentuate that with old school movie magic. So you had people throwing hail at the actors and branches. There's a scene where they're ducking under a falling truck. And you know how they did that? They lifted a giant truck up on a crane and then they plopped it on top of them. Like, that's how you do that. Now, what would you do? Okay, you want a truck? Do you want blue? Do you want red? Click, click, click. There's your truck. So in the new movie, there are some amazing, terrifying tornadoes, massive scenes of widescreen destruction. But at the same time, I feel like I know what that is. We all know what that is because we've seen that kind of CGI spectacle. And the interesting thing is, you look at the original Twister, if you remember, the wind roared. And one of the reasons it felt so primal, they mixed into the sound of the wind lions and tigers.
That's right.
And so it feels silly, but I think it also affects you. And I think what is the most powerful, the most intense part of the new Twisters movie wasn't the special effects. It's a scene where they're running for their life and they're hiding in this empty hotel swimming pool. And there's just this mother and daughter, and she's just saying, hold on, it's gonna be okay. That's the scene. I don't even know what those characters' names are, but it was the humanity, it was the acting. That is the special effect better than any simulation.
Okay, I remember from the original, that scene of the cow twisting in the air.
Yeah.
That was iconic. I mean, you saw it every other commercial, was that poor cow twisting the wind. Okay, let's talk about the director who's wrangling in this Twister. How's it doing?
Lee Isaac Chung. So a few years ago, I was singing the praises of this beautiful film called Minari. And this was a Korean-American story about this family who come to America and trying to live the American dream, doing their own farm. And I guess the logic is, well, he grew up in Arkansas, and that's near Oklahoma, so let's have him direct this thing. But I don't see any of Chung's sensitivity or subtlety in this film. And for a movie where he says it's supposed to be about science and hope, again and again we hear this is a once-in-a-generation explosion of storms. No one ever says the words climate change, because even Chung himself said he didn't want the film to become too message-oriented. Now, the lack of courage aside, I think the magic of the first Twister wasn't the twisters, it was that tension between Helen Hunt and Bill Paxton. And this is where this movie falls down. It's the script. It's what little they're giving Glen and Daisy to work with. I know there's a lot of excitement around Glen Powell, but his best stuff in this film isn't when he's the clown-chasing cowboy. It's when he's a little embarrassed. It's when he's a little awkward, but he doesn't get a chance to show us that. He's too busy posing in the cowboy hat. And then Daisy is another British actor trying to play an American, but there's no grit. There's nothing like the personality that we saw with Helen Hunt. And I know people are gonna be watching this saying, Eli, you know what? It's tornadoes, it's twisters, it's just a guilty pleasure. I like my guilty pleasures to have a little more flavor. And I'm sorry, well, let's take a look at my rating. This one blows.
Sorry. I saw that poor cow twisting in the wind. CBC's Eli Glasner. Thank you, Eli.
You're welcome.